There is a moment in every great story where the ground falls away, a moment when certainty collapses, when the mentor falls, the guide is lost, and the path ahead is swallowed by shadow. It is a moment of pure narrative gravity. It tells us that the world is real, that consequences are absolute, that meaning has a price, and that price is often death. We recognize this moment instinctively. It is the point where a story stops comforting us and begins demanding something in return. And yet, in the very heart of one of our greatest stories, this law appears to be broken. A wizard falls. He plunges into darkness, into fire and ice, into silence. And then he returns, not diminished, but greater, not merely restored, but transformed, clothed in white, armed with a clearer purpose, a more potent light. To the modern ear, to an instinct shaped by the economy of consequence, this sounds wrong. It sounds like a narrative cheat, a convenient reversal. Even a storyteller as ruthless as George R.R. Martin has voiced this unease, that Gandalf should have stayed dead, that his return, especially as a being of enhanced power, undermines the raw truth of his sacrifice on the bridge of Khazad-dûm. And at first glance, this critique feels sharp, even fair. But this feeling is born from a profound misconception, a misunderstanding of what Gandalf is, of how his world is built, and of what his return was truly meant to accomplish. Because what if Gandalf did not return to win the war? What if he returned to ensure there was still a world left, win or lose? And before we go any further, pause here for a moment. Because if you have ever lived through an ending, one that felt final, irreversible, only to watch the world continue as if nothing had truly happened, then you already understand the discomfort at the heart of this story.
Not meant to die.
To understand what happened on the bridge, we must first understand the being who fell from it. Gandalf is not a man. He is not an elf whose spirit journeys to the halls of Mandos. He is a Maya, a being of spirit older than the world itself, a consciousness that existed before mountains were raised, before seas were poured into their basins, before the physical world was sung into being. When Gandalf walks Middle-earth, he does so under a veil. His body is not his true form. It is a limitation, willingly accepted. Age, weariness, forgetfulness, pain. These are not natural to him. They are restraints. And here lies the first fracture in our understanding. How do we measure death for a being who was never meant to be bound by flesh?
Unmade.
Tolkien, in his later private writings, sketched a far darker answer than most readers realize. When a being of Gandalf's order is slain, its body is destroyed, but its spirit does not depart the world. Instead, it is unmade, stripped of form, stripped of coherence, stripped even of the ability to gather its own thoughts. It does not become a ghost. It does not pass into rest. It becomes a storm with no center, a scream trapped in a vacuum, a will that cannot act, a self that cannot remember why it exists. This is not death as release. It is existence without purpose. And here, the story asks something deeply uncomfortable of us. Can you imagine continuing to exist without any sense of direction, without even the ability to desire an ending?
Given back.
Left alone, such a being might remain in this state indefinitely. Gandalf could not return by his own strength. He could not reassemble himself. He could not choose to come back. His return is not a mechanism of the world. It is not a natural resurrection. It is an act of intervention. Ilúvatar, God in Tolkien's quiet theology, reaches into the unraveling of a servant whose mission has failed. The gray pilgrim is pulled from dissolution, given a new form, a more potent authority, and sent back, which forces a final unsettling question. If your life must be given back to you by a higher will, whose purpose does it truly serve?
The reward that lies.
At this point, the critics appear to be right. A death, a return, greater power, clearer authority. In almost any other story, this would be the textbook definition of a reward, a narrative power-up, the hero's second chance, granted with interest. And if we are honest with ourselves, this is exactly how it feels. Because if you were given a second life, stronger, wiser, unburdened by doubt, would you not see it as a gift? Would you not assume it was meant to help you finish what you started? But this is the bait, because stories do not reveal their truth through what they grant, but through what they refuse to do next.
2 roads, 1 silence.
Follow now the road of the ring-bearer. After the bridge, the Fellowship moves through Lothlorien, down the Anduin, toward the breaking point at Amon Hen. And in that critical moment, as Frodo sits upon the high seat, places the ring upon his finger, and feels the eye of Sauron wheel and focus upon him, a voice breaks the spell. A voice from impossibly far away. Take it off. Take off the ring. It is Gandalf's voice, his last direct intervention in the quest of the ring. From this moment on, the paths diverge completely. Frodo and Sam turn east into the Emyn Muil, the dead marshes, the ash and silence of Mordor. Their story becomes one of concealment, suffering, and erosion. And Gandalf? Gandalf goes west, to Rohan, to Isengard, to Minas Tirith. He stands on walls, he counsels kings, he leads armies, but he does not follow the ring. And this divergence asks something sharp of us. Have you ever turned away from the obvious battle to stand guard over something quieter and far more fragile?
The wrong war.
If Gandalf's power has increased and his purpose clarified, why is it not aimed at the central task of the age? Why does he not challenge the Dark Tower? Why does he not shield the ring-bearer from the Nazgul? Why does he leave the fate of the world in the hands of a hobbit and a gardener? If he is not fighting the war we expect, what war is he actually fighting?
The shield, not the sword.
This is the pivot, the moment the story reveals its hidden machinery. Gandalf the White does not return to win the war. He returns to prevent the world from collapsing before the war's outcome is decided. He does not strike at evil's heart. He braces against its weight. He buys time, not for Frodo, whose path is guided by a deeper grace, but for the world itself. Imagine the chain of collapse if he had not returned. Theoden remains broken. Rohan falls in silence. Saruman's armies roll east. Minas Tirith is crushed between Mordor and Isengard. The last kingdoms of men are erased. Now imagine, by some miracle, the ring is still destroyed. What dawn follows? A world already dead.
victory without a future. And here lies the truth that anchors everything. Sometimes the greatest act is not ending the war, but making sure there is still something left to live in afterward.
Giving back the will.
Gandalf goes to Rohan not to raise an army, but to resurrect a people. He does not seize power, he restores choice. Theoden rises not as a weapon, but as a king. And the question cuts close to the bone. Is giving someone back their will less powerful than defeating their enemy?
Holding the world together.
At Minas Tirith, Gandalf does not claim glory. He organizes, he steadies, he preserves the idea of the city as long as stone still stands upon stone. He does not win the battle. He makes survival possible. And survival in this world is an act of defiance. Because what is the value of defending something fragile when you know it may not endure?
Too powerful to follow.
Had Gandalf remained with the Fellowship, he would have been a beacon. The eye would have turned fully toward the ring, and the ring itself, which he dared not take, would have whispered louder with every step. Could he have resisted at the brink, where Frodo could not? We will never know. And that uncertainty is the point. Is your strength always a blessing, or can it become the very thing that endangers those you wish to protect?
Reassigned.
Gandalf's death is not a continuation, it is a reassignment. He is removed from the equation of secrecy and placed into the war of preservation. He trades guidance for command, wandering for stewardship. And when your original purpose is taken from you, what remains of who you are?
What the White lost.
There is a quiet sorrow in Gandalf the White. The Grey Wanderer would have lingered in the Shire, shared a pipe, marveled at a good harvest. The White Rider cannot. His gaze is fixed on darkening horizons. Would you surrender the self you loved if the world demanded someone harder in your place?
Plan B.
The original plan of the Valar has failed. The Astari were meant to guide through wisdom. Now one must command through force. Gandalf becomes Plan B, an admission that the world has gone terribly wrong. He does not restore lost glory. He builds a seawall against the flood and asks one final thing of us. Is it worth fighting for a future that will never belong to you?
The morning after victory.
So, did Gandalf truly die? Yes, more completely than any mortal could comprehend. And his return was not a cheat, but a correction. He is not the hero of the climax. He is the architect of the context in which a climax is possible. He ensures that when the ring falls, the world is still alive to hear it. And we are left with a question that reaches far beyond Middle-earth. If victory destroys everything that must come after it, is it still victory at all?